and offering a short introduction to Rabbi Phyllis Ocean Berman. That will be, if you want to know anything about her, go to the link in the emails, or just, Google her, or however you use your Google machine, and you'll learn a lot about her, right? But that's not what I'm going to use as my introduction. And Phyllis, you're not prepared for this, but you can correct me on anything that I say. The first time that we met, it was upstairs in a church around 1989 in Philly. And now it might have been upstairs where B'nai Or eventually met. Now that might have been B'nai Or, and Reb Zalman was there, blessed memory, and Arthur was there, and there was a woman there who had no hair, and she was very, very memorable. Now, this was my first introduction to Jewish renewal, and believe you me, there was nothing I recognized there from anything in my life, from my conservative, very conservative Jewish background. And so, after a time, before the service was over, I left. Now, years later, then I'm at Eilat Chaim, and those of you who know Rabbi Phyllis know that she was the creator of mishpacha groups, which for some people became a very, very important part of their Eilat Chaim experience. Anybody raise your hand who ever took part in a mishpacha group anywhere? Of course, Ellen Weaver's got her hand up, and Stephen and Mary Rita. Well, my mishpacha group was not very well run, and so I went once, and then I didn't come back. So if you can see, there is a theme that's running through this. I see Phyllis, I meet Phyllis, I am exposed to Phyllis, and I don't come back. Let's jump now to many years later, when I am invited to be a member of the Hashpa'ah, the spiritual direction faculty of the Aleph Ordination program. And who welcomes me with such outstretched arm, and so happy that I am on the faculty, but you, Rabbi Phyllis Ocean Berman, and I've always been grateful to you for that. So, and I did keep coming back until I eventually left, because I come to go. But we are here this evening, and I'm going to turn things over before I hurt myself. Please give a warm Mosh welcome to Rabbi Phyllis Ocean Berman.
Thank you so much, Reb Mark. Sorry you didn't stay. It was B'nai Or by the time you came in 89. It was not B'nai Or. And I was not the creator of mishpacha groups, but I was the one who brought them to Eilat Chaim, because I knew that it was the mishpacha groups, not the wonderful teachers, but the mishpacha groups, where people had a chance to process what they were experiencing, including their anger, it's not conservative enough, it's not Orthodox enough, it's too Jewish, it's whatever it was and wasn't, because they had a chance to speak how they were feeling. And when they found that that was okay, whatever it was that they were feeling, they came back the next day and the next week and the next year. So that was the power of the mishpacha groups. Thank you, Ellen, and anybody, and Steve, for being facilitators. I'm thrilled to be here. I got to watch the recording from the first week of Chesed and from the second week of Gevura, and I see at least Dan, who has studied with me at the last Kala. So this is going to be old stuff for him. And if you want to understand anything that I don't say clearly, you just talk to him. He's the man. I'm really thrilled to be doing this, because like the other two speakers, the first two speakers, I am crazy in love with counting the Omer. Oh, not exactly that. I'm crazy in love with this Sfirot. And how did that happen? Let me start with a song. So maybe you can put the words up, Mark. Okay. God, I want to do for you. Yeah, I want to feel for you. God, I want to know for you. Yeah, I want to be for you. You are
Action, you are
feeling, you are knowing, you are being, you are action, you are feeling, you are knowing, you just are. This was one of Reb Zalman's many songs that he used in his when at the introduction to his teaching. And I learned so much from Reb Zalman. And one of the things I learned, and I've only just very recently put it into words, when my husband said that he had talked to his men's group about the ritual that I'm doing with him each night. And I said, well, I'm glad you told them about that, but did you tell them the music I sing at the end? And he said, no, why should I do that? And I said, because the music makes the words go down. And Reb Zalman knew that, and he used music a tremendous amount in his teachings. He would teach for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then there was music. And I just accepted that, but I didn't think about what was really there. And what was really there was that he was giving people a chance to take it in, to let some of the ideas fill us, rest inside of us, and make space for more ideas when he continued on. He was a gifted, gifted teacher. So I've got some notes here so that I don't ramble too much because I've got so much to say. And I want you to know that in the spirit of Reb Zalman, I'm going to be doing some talking, but you're also going to be doing some talking. So don't go away. I was thrilled to watch the recordings from the last 2 weeks and to see how very different they were for the people who were there. And tonight is also going to be very different. And I'm hoping that the next 4 weeks will also be very different. And how exciting it is that in the non-Orthodox world that most of us live in the non-Hasidic world that most of us live in, the Omer and the Sfirot have become something that many of us are really obsessed with. How did that happen? Well, like the two previous speakers, for me, it happened because of Reb Zalman. Tonight, I'm supposed to be speaking about Tiferet, and I'm going to be. And because it's not yet dark here on the East Coast, I can say that it is still Tiferet Shebet Tiferet. So how could I not want to do that? This sphera that turned out to be the most complicated of all of them for me. And I'll tell you that whole story. I was one of the many people getting older, but I'm not getting grayer. You can see that. Who was one of the direct students of Reb Zalman. And I felt like many of the 36 or more that he tapped just before he died, and literally tapped not in any leadership way, but kind of giving us the blessing to teach in his name. So he was an extraordinary teacher. And when we would go to the early retreats at Fellowship Farm right outside of Philadelphia, about a 45-minute trip from Philadelphia, on holiday retreats, especially for Simchat Torah, he would divide us into groups by the day of the week in which we were born. And then each day would be assigned a sphera. And he would do some basic explaining of how he thought about the sphirot. And he would then leave us in the small groups to talk about what color that made us think of, and therefore what color we were going to wear that evening when we led the group for that sphera. And then he asked us to think about what kind of music was suggested by this meaning of the sphera. So we would choose a piece of music that we loved that represented the sphera to us. And then he would ask for a dance that we thought, a movement that was going to represent the sphera. And so we did that. He taught experientially. He wanted us to experience with our own bodies, with our own minds, with our own hearts, and with our own souls, what it was that he was trying to get across to us. So it's not surprising that I'm obsessed about the Sefirot. But the obsession is actually not exactly the way you would imagine it would go. I can tell you to this day, I think, what he said each sphera was. But some years ago, I began to think, except for chesed, that overflowing love out to other people, I didn't think any of the words that he gave me meant anything to me. I mean, I understood them, but they didn't mean anything to me. And so I did what I always do when something doesn't mean something to me. I take it to this swimming pool. And thank goodness in Philadelphia, this great swimming pool opened about 13 years ago. I signed up before it was open because I wanted a great place to swim, and they told me there were going to be a lot of lanes, lap lanes to swim in. And I've been swimming 3 times a week ever since. But I know almost from the time I was in my early 20s that when I went swimming, I could go into the pool with a question or a problem or a bad situation that I was trying to make better. And somehow by the end of the swim, I felt like I knew what to do, and I felt really easy about the situation. I didn't have words for it then, but according to Shoshana Cooper, who is one of my beloved meditation teachers, I was meditating in the pool. Because I've been swimming since I was 6, I don't really need to think about the stroke and my body and my breathing. My body takes care of that. And so my mind goes free, and my mind goes to whatever was either nothing occasionally or the things that are troubling me. So I took the 7 sefirot to the swimming pool, and except for chesed, I came up with very different words for the other 6. So this is not what you've heard about Gevura. I'm not going to contradict. I'm just going to say, I see it differently. And I hope the 4 people who come after me will see it differently too, so that you'll have a big experience of possibilities that might fit something for you. That's what my real hope is for tonight. I had remembered that Zalman said that there's no good and bad sefirot. What there is too little or too much of these 7 qualities. And I began to think about the sefirot not as an academic question. I didn't want to research it. I don't know if I don't want to write a book. I haven't written a book about it. What I saw it as was a self-diagnostic. You know, when I went on my first meditation retreat, I realized that I was allergic to some of the things I was eating and drinking all the time. I knew it not because I had a skin test, but because I was quiet enough to see what the impact was of some of the foods, and particularly of caffeinated coffee. So the same thing happens, I think, when you really can get into with your whole being, your body, your heart, your mind, and your soul, into what these different qualities are. And they become a way of looking at not what's right and wrong with you or with any of us, but what's easy for us, what we are comfortable with, what we're good at, and what's not so easy. So I'm going to say to you, I'm going to go through the first three, and later on I will go through the last four, just because all of the two others did that too. I want you to hear the whole seven as I imagine them. But I see them as having a relationship to one another. If the two arms represent Chesed and Gevura, and then they come into the point of a triangle, there has to be a relationship between those two and the triangle in which connects them. The same thing is true about Netzach and Hod. If those are the two thighs or the two legs, they're in a continuum with one another, and they too come to a triangle where they're connected. That has to mean something, and that's what got me started. So I said, okay, if Chesed is love flowing out, then Gevura has to be love flowing in. Not egotistical love, but a self-acceptance, an acceptance of ourselves as humans, not perfect, but doing the best that we can most of the time. And as one of my teachers would say, he would say, we need to pay our Ogdens for it. Well, all of us who did training with him went to home and looked in the dictionary to see what Ogdens were. And guess what? It wasn't in the dictionary. Ogdens are the mistakes we make and what we learn from our mistakes. So you're not going to find Ogden in the dictionary, but we all know about mistakes. So if Chesed is love flowing out, then for me, Gevura had to be the love flowing in. And from that love flowing in, a lot of Chesed can flow out. If we don't have self-acceptance, if we don't have some caring and respect for us, it's not likely we're going to be very kind to other people. So I see Chesed and Gevura so deeply connected to one another. And then Tiferet. And I have to tell you that one of my Hebrew names is Tiferet. My Sunday school teacher when I was 10 years old gave me the name Tzipora. Why Tzipora? Because I have the Yiddish name that I was given from my grandma, Fagel, who I never met. She was my father's mother, and Fagel means bird. So my Hebrew teacher said my Hebrew name was Tzipora. Reb Zalman said, he added another name to that. He said, Esperanza. He called me that. That means hope. And then Arthur, who I am married to, my partner Arthur Wasco, called me Tiferet because he thought that I was an incorporation or what I would call a synthesis of Chesed and Gevura, that both of those things were there for me. So I think of Tiferet, the third of the seven Sfirot, and the sixth of the seven Sfirot as synthesizing the two that come before, whatever the two are that come before. So this is how it became very real for me. When I retired from my work in New York, where I ran an English language ulpan, an intensive English language school for new immigrants and refugees in the New York metropolitan area, adults. And I came back home to Philadelphia, not just at night and on weekends, but 7 days a week. And I was living with Arthur 7 days a week in the same house, 24 hours a day, pretty much. It happened at times that he would ask me to do things for him. And if he asked me, for example, when I was on my way to go swimming on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which I do, and I know when I'm not going to get a swimming lane, like today, when I had to wait 20 minutes before there was a lane open, I know I can't afford to not go on time, or I'm not going to get into the pool. So when he asks me to do something and I'm on my way out to do something, I have to make a decision whether I give to him and then not to myself, or I give to myself and not to him. And one day, one particularly dramatic day, the something that he asked me was a legitimate something. It was something he couldn't do easily for himself. Arthur is now 91. He has macular degeneration. He's got a lot of things in his body that are no longer functioning very well. He can't see the screen. He can't read very much anymore. He can't see the keyboard on the computer. He's a writer and he's a reader, prodigious both writer and reader. This was his whole life from early childhood and through all of his working life. So when he asked me to do something and I knew it was something he couldn't do, and first I said no, because I wasn't going to get to the pool on time. And then I said yes, but I could feel myself resentful because I knew I wasn't going to get to swim. I realized I had a problem. And that is the nature of Tiferet. And that's how I understand Tiferet. Tiferet is that synthesizing of these two other amazing sfirot in a way that every moment is different. It's not like you can know from a past experience what to do in this moment when you need to know. So we have an example in our Torah. Moshe, when there was no water in the desert, hit the rock and water spewed forth and he was a hero. And about 38 or 9 years later, again, when there was no water, he hit the rock and it was the wrong thing to do. And we know that there are things that we do either habitually or we did well at a moment when we did it that doesn't necessarily work the next time. That when we act out of habit or because we think we know, and that's one of the great and terrible things of being a grown-up, because when we're a grown-up, once we have an ego, we think we know. But the knowing sometimes locks us into repetitive action that's not the right thing. So the beauty and the complication of Tiferet is it's synthesizing something at every moment, and we need to have the discernment to figure out what is our right response. Do I give more toward the other person, or do I give more to myself? And at different moments, it's a very different story. Sometimes it's easy. When you have a partner who's sick or you have a baby at home, it's simple. You give, give, give. When that's not so, when there are no crises, when there are no emergencies, or when you're sick, or when you have an important appointment, or when you know that if you don't get someplace at a certain time, it's not going to work out. It's a whole different story. So trying to live through a lifetime of a loving lifetime, a generous lifetime, a giving lifetime, in which you're accustomed to being generous and giving, and a lifetime in which you each also value yourself and your own knowing and your own experiences, and having to make decisions sometimes that are very complicated about yes and no. Now, Judith Dack is right here, and I'm going to give an example, because this is how we became loving friends. Judith was at her first summer at Eilat Chaim, and one night she stopped me at about 10 or 10:30 at night, and she said, "I just have to talk to you about something." And I don't know where I got this from. I think it was from the truth of exhaustion. I worked 6 days a week at Eilat Chaim from 6 in the morning till 10 at night, every single summer, every single week. I said to her, "Judith, I want to be able to listen to you, but I am so exhausted, I don't have it in me." That's an example of in the place in which I had chesed and I had gevura, gevura was a little bit stronger because I had nothing left in me to give. And I said to her, let's do this tomorrow if you can. And she agreed. And tomorrow became many, many years ago. And to this day, I am always open to her unless I'm very tired. So Tiferet is this very complex thing that we can't know all the time how to do. And there are moments then that we could stop and really consider. But most of the time we make a snap judgment. We either do out or we do in from our own sense. But the wrestle inside us is complicated. And the ways that we get information about how to make those decisions is also complicated, and it's different for each of us. So that is essentially my chesed, my gevura, and my tiferet. I see it as a way of looking at ourselves. Am I generous enough? Do I listen and help people when they need help and I'm capable of doing that? Am I self-caring enough that I know what I need and what's essential to my being? In order to be a good caregiver right now for a 91-year-old beloved, I need to take care of my body. I need to take care of my heart and my soul. So I need to be in some, not balance, but a right synthesis of the giving out and giving in at almost every moment. And I found out from that day when I got it all wrong, I was angry if I gave up what I was wanting and needing to do for myself. And I was ashamed if I didn't give what my partner needed at that moment. It was a no-win situation. So I began to think, I thought I knew Tiferet, but oh my goodness, I have a lot of work to do on that. And I set my mind on getting better because I realized how very complex it was. All of these sefirot are qualities supposedly that are in us because we were created in the image of the divine. But that doesn't mean we don't have to work for them and work with them in order to refine them. And the older we get, the more refinement we have to do. And so that is my Tiferet and the Tiferet that I want to give to you. So I want to speak very briefly about Netzach, Hod, and Yisod. You'll hear it, I'm sure, differently from other people. And then Malchut. Netzach is, for me, sustainability, reliability, responsibility. If you say that you have an appointment at 10 o'clock with somebody, you will be there at 10 o'clock. If you say that you are going to do something, you do it. If you say for your own sake that you're going to exercise 3 times a week, you do it. So those are the things that we sustain ourselves and our relationships with other people with, because people can count on us. For me, Netzach is what exists in time, in our commitment to time, in our commitment to other people, and in our word that we give to them and to ourselves about these relationships that we form, including to ourselves. And Hod, which is on that same continuum, is time outside of time. It's the time in which we break all the commitments. We're not reliable. We don't keep our plans because something has come up that is so essential that we give everything to that. And it could be an emergency. So you break everything that you've committed and planned to do on that day. Or more pleasantly, it could be meditation, could be contemplation. It could be staring at a gorgeous flower on a tree or a bush. It could be watching the waves in the ocean or the night sky. and particularly the sky as day turns to night, or as night turns to day, where we can get lost in the beauty, the magnificence, or the moment of interconnection with another person that is so profound that we don't want to miss a moment of it. We know something has happened that changes the routine. So if Netzach is sticking close to our commitment and the routine and the time, and if Hod is the throwing it all away because a moment has arisen that just takes us someplace else, and the willingness to go someplace else outside the rhythm and the routine, then Yisod is the synthesis between those two and the complexity of knowing which one wins in any given moment, very much like Tiferet in terms of Chesed and Gevura. So these two synthesizing sfirot are complex because it means having the development in us, the growing and maturing development of the other sfirot, so that we're caught in a moment of not trying to discern which is the one that's going to be the greater percentage at a particular moment. Many of us know this instinctively. If someone is sick or it's an emergency, if a child is crying, we go straight there. We forget about everything else that was on the plan for today, and we do what the moment calls for. And for those of us who are lucky enough to have meditation retreats as part of our practice, our spiritual practice, we know that we need times when we simply are off duty, as I would say, to other people and to other commitments, where we can hear our bodies and feel our bodies, which most of us don't do except in childhood. And then we think that we're supposed to leave them behind once we become students in school. And then we have time to look at and hear what are the things we never let ourselves think or see or question or know. So both of those Netzach and Hod, are also tremendously important to us, and trying to find a way, maybe not like that famous meditator who sat on a park bench for 2 years, we're told, but maybe not like the person who doesn't know how to do anything except the work that gives their life meaning. And that makes it so very hard at times when your body is telling you, or maybe other people are telling you, it's time to retire. But you don't have any other self-identity. You don't want to retire. So it has these things have so many repercussions in our lives to develop each one of these sfirot so that we feel that we have them integrated in us. And integration is malchut. We have ideas about what these sfirot mean. I had lots of ideas from Reb Zalman, but until I found words that spoke to me, I couldn't use the sfirot in a meaningful way for myself. And until I could begin to see what wasn't strong in me, what was giving me difficulty or trouble in my life as a human being, trying to be a better human being, I didn't quite know that I had work to do. And knowing that I had work to do helped me to begin to focus on it, not just to think that I knew the right answers for each moment in my life. So I think that that's the moment for me to take a breath. I invite you to take a breath also and give you a little sense of where I'd like to go. I'm going to do a very brief meditation with you. And if you're comfortable, I'm going to ask you to check the seats that you're sitting in. to really feel, if you can, the chair behind you, if it's holding you, hopefully it is, and your feet on the ground so that you can feel the stability of the ground. And if you're willing to close your eyes, I think I'm going to do that also. And now to feel the breath coming in. And also the breath going out. And what an amazing gift this is, the breath that connects us to all life, to human life, to animal life, to aquatic life, to plant and tree life, to bug life, to all life that breathes in and out. And just for a moment, feel that breath in and out. In just a few minutes, I'm going to invite you to make this teaching experiential. And one way to do it is to go into small groups of 3, where you'll have a chance, you'll be invited to look at Chesed, Gevura, and particularly Tiferet, to see where you feel strong, where you don't feel as strong, and where, in fact, there may be some work for you to do. So I'm going to ask you with your breath to allow 3 breaths in without doing anything to change those breaths. Just don't do it, don't make it, just observe it and allow it. 3 breaths in. And when it's time to let them out, then with each of the 3 breaths, let the breath out more slowly. Slow it down going out. And you may be able to feel in that in-breath that you observe and accept, and in the out-breath that you slow down, that the breath is going to go in deeper and go down deeper, so that you're not taking short breaths at the top of your lungs, but breaths that really animate you. And you may notice that the slowing down of the breaths, when they come out, when you are ready to release the breath, that slowing down calms down the nervous system and the rush with which we live so much of our lives to get it all in, to fulfill all the commitments, to do everything we said we were going to do today. So I'm going to pause for a minute so that I can do this, because I can't do it when I'm talking. But I'm going to ask you, if you haven't yet done it, 3 breaths in, just allowing, with no change, no action on your part. And when it's time for the out breath, to slow the out breath out. And sit in the quiet for just a few minutes, allowing yourself to feel something about where you are with Chesed, where you are with Gevura, and where you are with Tiferet. In just a moment or a minute, Reb Mark will be inviting you into a group. You'll be there for about 12 to 15 minutes. The instruction is to share something about where you see yourself with these three, this triangle, Chesed, Gevurah, and the complexity of Tiferet.